One age-old issue is re-emerging, whether the U.S. should have a military draft. This report from the Washington Post just days ago claiming some in former President Trump's camp specifically are considering bringing back the draft. Now, Trump has since called mandatory military service a ridiculous idea, sharing that the story was a failed attempt to damage him with voters, saying he's, quote, never even thought of that idea. Well, at this point, it has been more than 50 years since anyone has been drafted into the U.S. military. Currently, about 1.3 million people, that is less than 1% of the population, serves in the armed forces. Recruiting Americans to join the military has been tough in recent years. This year represents the smallest active duty force since 1940. And just last year, the military services fell short of the Pentagon's recruiting goal by about 41,000. Now, officials at the Department of Defense say recruiting challenges are, quote, complex and multifaceted. Here to provide more insight is NewsNation national security contributor Lieutenant General Richard Newton, former U.S. Air Force Assistant Vice Chief of Staff who spent more than 3 decades in the military. Happy Father's Day. Thanks for making the time for us today.
Thank you, Natasha. Always great to be with you, and happy Father's Day to everyone going out there. Thank you.
How concerning is it this year representing the smallest active duty force since 1940? I mean, have the threats to our nation decreased?
Well, no, I think the global picture, and you and I have talked about this many times, I've never seen, certainly in my 30-plus years on active duty and the 10 years hence, that more of what I would call a chaotic global picture with Ukraine and Russia, Israel being attacked brutally by Hamas back on October 7th, and of course, China growing in their military capabilities, and not necessarily just in the Asia-Pacific region, but around the world. So it's a very challenging time, but nonetheless, as you indicated, we haven't had a draft since 1973. We fell short of our recruiting goals in 2023. My sources tell me for 2024, the Army, the Navy, the Marines, and the Space Force it's likely they're going to meet their recruiting goals. The Navy's going to fall short about 6,000. But nonetheless, it is a national security issue that we are not meeting our recruiting goals, and it's going to have an impact on our military, not only for today, Natasha, but for many years to come.
What does the impact actually look like? Because we hear this a lot, that recruitment is a struggle, that thousands of people short in different arms here. What does it actually mean and look like on the ground?
Well, first and foremost, I want our viewers to understand, and certainly the American people, we still have the absolute best military in the world. We have certainly very capable technology and weapon systems and so forth. But Natasha, what makes our military great and far better than any other military in the world is our men and women, all volunteers. You had up on the screen there, it says 1.3 million men and women serve in the military. Actually, that's active duty. Mm-hmm. You've got another about 700,000. Part of those are in our National Guard and also in our reserve forces, and their service is just as important as those who serve on active duty. But the fact that we fell short last year will have a ripple effect through the years. When I testified in Congress, both in the House and Senate, I mentioned every time I testified, or at least was asked, that we should not take our recruiting of our young men and women for granted at all. Just as important with recruiting, it's retaining the people we have to make sure that they've got the skills, make sure that they've got the systems and the weapons that they want to train on to be able to hone their skills, but also to make sure they're paid appropriately and effectively, but also that we really do a lot of due diligence to take care of their family members as well. Yeah. So it's not just the fact that we're falling short in terms of recruiting and getting access to youngsters wanting to join the military, but it's a multifaceted challenge that we're facing right now.
One more question for you. What do you make of this Washington Post report saying that some in Trump's camp are considering bringing back the draft? I know that Mr. Trump has since said, no, this is not true. I've never even thought of this idea. Is it an idea that you would support?
It's not. Serving in the military, volunteering especially to serve in the military, it's a privilege. My dad served, I served, and we have our son-in-law serving in Air Force Special Operations and so forth. It is a privilege for men and women to volunteer and to serve their nation. As President Trump, his response to that was that's a ridiculous thought, and it is. I think we should continue to rely on those who volunteer.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.